Thank you invitation from NAK to have me on NextRise 2021. I'm Zhang from International Technology Transport Network ITTN. ITTN were founded in 2011, and we have already provided service to promote cross-border technology transport cooperation in past 10 years. ITTN network include 610 international technology transport organizations from 35 economies from all over the world. ITTN were working very closely with the National Science, Technology and Innovation Relevant Department. We have been involved into 26 bilateral, multilateral, governmental framework programs relevant to international technology transfer cooperation. ITTN committed ourselves to build up the platform, including technology transfer exchange and matchmaking events, a network system, online system, and we wish to play a role in cross-border technology transfer cooperation promotion as the fourth party between academy, industry, and the third party. Today, we are very glad to share with the audience and colleagues for NextRise 2021 with the practice of international technology transfer in ITTN and the capacity building experience. Four aspects I would like to present today. The first part is international technology transfer of China. I will share in this part with my organization the features and opportunities of China's technology transfer. According to the studies of Chinese scholars since 1949, China's cross-border technology transfer has gone through 5 development stages. Starting as the act of promoting the transformation of science and technological achievements amendment in 2015. There were hundreds of relevant policies and regulations have been released and implemented by the central and regional government in China. One of the latest and most significant policy is the 14th 5-year plan for national economy and social development. In one paragraph, the policy side and highlighted the future target of the development on technology transfer professional organizations, institutes, and capacity building for technology transfer professionals. So promoted by those previous mentioned policies, innovation have become the primary driving force for development. Right now, China ranked world number 2 in general R&D expenditure. Besides, in 2020, the general calculation in China of the technology transfer transactions has reached more than US dollars 443, and with the yearly growth rate at more than just 26%, and more than 19 of the total transaction amount achieved by the enterprises side. And according to the numbers released by the Vice China Minister of Commerce in April in this year, in past 5 years, the country's technology import and export value reached almost 300 billion US dollars. Refer to a study report from a Korea organization in global technology import and export in 2018. China ranked first place in technology export and ranked 5th place in technology import. And I would also like to share here about my organizations and opinions about those just 4 aspects formed the general advantages for China future technology transfer cross-border cooperation. Those include the world's largest domestic market, world's largest number of talent in STEM, the completed industrial system, and the third-party market prospect. And according to the plan of the China Ministry of Science and Technology, the National Service System for Technology Achievements Transformation composed by 7 domains. Those include the national demonstration areas. There's more than 1,000 variety types of technology training institutions and 500,000 practitioners in technology market. Yeah. And very interesting, just a new trends I noted from 2020 annual report on transformation of China's scientific and technological achievements based on study to those just 3,450 scientific and research institutes and universities. The contract amount from them reached more than 15 billion RMB yuan in 2019, with a decrease of almost 20% over the previous year. Actually, just in my opinion, I think that decreasing happening means the storage of the high quality just technological achievements in China academies has been successfully commercialized very much by the series of favorable policy and insurance, especially to that part of high quality inventions and just innovative technology. On the other hand, focus to future long terms. We think the solid domestic requirement from the industry side to innovative technologies will definitely just raise very strong requirements for foreign, I mean, this overseas supplying side of innovative technologies. Yeah. I also like just to call the opinion from my friend, Professor Dongmin Chen from Peking University, to highlight those 5 just directions in future with greater potential of cross-border technology transfer cooperation with China. One of the most important, I think, is the 30-60 carbon target of China, which is a strategic approach just released recently, means achieve peak carbon, I mean, dioxide emission by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. In my opinion, by all means, just impact all just the adjustment or optimize just will definitely happen to this industry structure. From a positive view, we think just this just target or strategy can even just generate a very strong force to promote the development of a new technological revolution in China. I also like just to highlight here a general view to overseas practitioners who want to choose the destination in China for cross-border technology transfer, technology commercialization, corporations. China is a huge country, can definitely supply a very diversity opportunities. In next part, I collected 7 successful cases for share. Our very latest achievements promoted by a framework program of BRICS technology transfer standard is reached between Russian pharmaceutical company with innovation technologies and China's partners with advantages in manufacturing capacity and cost control based on good quality. The mass-produced 9-valent HPV vaccine at almost a half price will mainly benefit to Russian women in this case in future cooperation development. In next case, promoted by China Korea Enterprise Innovation Corporation Center, this framework cooperation happened between the Korea Ministry of Industry, Trade and Economy, MOTI, and China Ministry of Science and Technology. Korea famous pharmaceutical company Wins has successfully introduced and landing the world awards of blowing, feeding, sealing 3-in-1 spectral eye drop production technology to meet China's local production needs. Next case, as the great opportunity is and significant policy encouragements in China. Another just Korea-based technology, which is aimed to provide a more efficient and safe new mobile liquid uh, hydrogen refilling station technology has been successful achieved matchmaking in last year with 4 Chinese potential partners from 4 different regions and in 4 different areas. Next case is from German, which is utilizing big data platform for electric charging, recharging, electrical vehicle integration, and retrofitting, as well as a smart battery sweeping. The successful landing of this case, driven by the huge clean energy infrastructure construction plan and investment in those top cities of China, besides the Winter Olympic applications, has also successfully linked to this project future development in China. A long history and a famous platform for cross-border technology commercialization, like Stanford Bio Design, is also very much valuable to China. In this case, the rich clinical study resource has been well organized by the regional government support to benefit the U.S. Academy's medical device innovation commercialization practice. In the meantime, the Chinese participants has also been shared and learned the new methodology of medical device innovation that are not only limited just to the this exchange activities, but also the knowledge system. The book of just Stanford Bio Design is, of course, with 900 pages, has been translated into China and shared with the domestic practitioners in China in line of advanced and being innovative medical device technologies. And Gateway is another case of successful, business development in China with the unique just capability for innovative medical device just industrialization. And besides the world famous just professional just conference in professional fields like the medical device design conference of University of Minnesota is also the major focus for ITTN to promote the cross-border technology transfer cooperation. Third part is about our ITTN practice in capacity building for international technology transfer professionals. We think the capacity building composed of 4 domains include knowledge for understanding, strategy for adjustment, toolkits for operation, comprehensive quality for development. The beginning of our practice starts from the cooperation with the world famous technology transfer professional association as like Alton AUTM, as well as ATTP RTTP system. But for our aim is just to fulfilling the huge domestic requirements in China for technical transfer professionals. So we found that Alton system is not enough as there is a specialized forecast only limited in academy side. In next stage, ITTN promoted APEC region cooperation target to cover both the practice in developed and developing economies. We titled this program as APEC Innovation Flourishing. After 1 year, APEC funding program has been successfully endorsed and supported by APEC Subforum Partnership for a Policy Partnership for Science, Technology, and Innovation. The 2-year project has successfully involved 112 official delegates and experts from 17 APEC member economies in 4 meetings. As the one of the most important project output, handbook on technology commercialization practice and APEC economies has become an official outcome documents of APEC and it has been successfully published on APEC website and it became a general guiding document for the training of the technology transfer professionals in 21 APEC member economies. Next page is has this page listed all of the major contents of the handbook. 7 of classical technology commercialization surveys constructed the handbook as the main pillars, principles. In next phase, based on the APEC handbook, ITTN began to develop the training courses in China, target all relevant ongoing and potential technology transfer practitioners. The previous mentioned a huge amount in China of technology transfer transactions definitely just reflects the very solid, huge requirement for capacity building in China for professional tech transfer people. In this year, online just courses named Innovation and Technology Commercialization Professionals, ITCP, developed by the cooperation between Georgia Tech and ITTN. 3 pilot cohort has been successfully organized since March. Actually, just ITCP programs trainees who have completed the 20 hours online, 20 hours online training courses and pass the exams will receive a certificate issued by Georgia Tech. And we here welcome Korea potential partners to join the cooperation to promote the ITCP with Korea colleagues. Last part, we would like to share several thinkings and proposals. This shifting of a smiling curve, I also called it from Professor Dongmin Chen. We think the global value chain shifting will be the key influence aspect to future cross-border technology transfer cooperation. Uprising intention of developing economies for market scaling will be definitely the main force to generate the shifting. According to MF's forecast, world economy growth will come back positive until next year, positive growth in next year compared to pre-COVID in 2019. Impact for COVID on startup are very much serious. Besides, in last year, China is the only one economy in the world achieved the positive economy growth. And it's also mentioned as in IMF report named the World Economy Outlook report was said that China and the US will be the 2 main generators to world economy recovery in next period. This quoted from a British scholar study in recently shows the tendency of international order changing to multi-order world. And we definitely hope the competition could be a sort of constructive competition in next step. And we also expect RCEP, if successful, will enhance more close cooperation on technology cross-border commercialization among regional economies and can integrate complementary advantage of diversity innovation ecosystem. We think that the 4th industrial revolution will be a major strategy deployment that will affect future development, especially to developing countries. China top leader has called the multilateral cooperation focus on the challenge and opportunity of the 4th industrial revolution. Sustaining complex technologies as well as disruptive technologies will be the main focus to this kind of cooperation. We think the best practice of cross-border technology transfer commercialization should be shared with all of these colleagues in line of cross-border technology transfer cooperation from all over the world. ITTN did a successful project in last year, and here we call for the participation to the new project in 2021 from NEAK, from audience of all of the audience in NextRise 2021, and with a larger range of the topics. And we thank you very much for invitation.